Well, it's been a few weeks since my last video, and you can probably tell I am not in my usual studio, but there's a good reason for that. Last week, we made a 3,000-mile move back to northern Idaho, which is where we were living before we made our first 3,000-mile move to Florida. Long story short is that I'm going to be in flux for a few months before we move into our new house, but that just means that I'm going to get to set up an entirely new studio, which I am very excited for. But that's not what this video is about. You're probably here to learn about what was added to the new Lightroom 9.3 update. This update's got a lot going for it, both with new features and long-awaited improvements, but instead of teasing that, why don't we just dive right in? All right, so the first thing that I always like to do with these What's New videos is to remind you how you can get the latest version. To do that, you're going to launch the Creative Cloud desktop app over here, and then go on the left toolbar and select Apps. From here, you can click on View Updates. And then if you don't see the updates here already, you can just click on this Check for Updates button. Now, it's important to note that in some cases, I found that rebooting the computer helps. Like if you click on Check for Updates and it doesn't find the updates in the Creative Cloud app, reboot your computer and oftentimes you'll see your updates, which you can then install. All right, let's go on here and actually go to Lightroom. And so the first feature that I want to talk to you about, I am very excited about this because we've been working on this for a while and it has to do with search. So this feature specifically works with Lightroom, not Lightroom Classic, and it works with the cloud library. So any of your photos that you have synced to the cloud, you can use this feature. And it's basically a more intelligent search where you can use natural language to find a photo. And here's the thing. I don't keyword my photos. I've never keyworded my photos. Well, years and years ago, when I used Classic, I would dabble with keywording, but I'm too lazy. I have to admit it. I'm just too lazy to keyword my photos. Fortunately, I don't need to worry about that. And so let me show you what I mean here. So you can see this is my entire photo library. I've got 177,512 photos synced to my cloud library. And I remember, I don't know, it was maybe 6 months ago, I took a photo of a great blue heron eating a water snake. It was pretty crazy. And so I want to try to find it. I don't know where it is because I didn't tag it. I don't remember. I would go to these wetlands every weekend. So I don't know which shoot it was from. So what I can now do is go to the search bar here and I'm going to type in great blue heron eating a snake and then press enter and boom, actually there is the photo right there. Now, just to show you here, if I open up the info panel, you can see there's no metadata here that would indicate a great blue heron or a snake. And also if I click on the keyword button over here, you'll see there are no keywords. So this is basically a flat image with no metadata to indicate that I'm looking for this specific photo here of the great blue heron eating a snake. Now, I mean, you can search for all kinds of things. Like I also know that I have a photo that I took of a fisherman on a pier in Slovenia. And so I'm going to say a man standing on a pier with a fishing rod and hit enter. And here you go. These are actually the photos that I'm looking for. And you can see that it didn't just find these photos, it actually found a bunch of photos. These were taken in Piran, Slovenia. And if we go to the info here, you can see there are no metadata fields filled out. There are no keywords added. And then these are photos taken in Cuba, but it's the same criteria. You can see there's the man standing on a pier with a fishing rod. Same thing here, man. This, you can argue maybe is not a pier, but still, I think it's really cool. This, certainly works. This is in California. And so the thing is, I love this. This is where I think AI really shines. I think things like generative AI with Gen Remove, that's great. I use that all the time. But where AI really kind of shows its own is when it is used to analyze vast amounts of information. So in this case here, it has access to my entire library. So if I just type in a term, it finds it and I don't have to kind of go hunting for it. And so this kind of AI search was available in Lightroom for a while using Sensei. You can do things like, I don't know, a yellow jacket or something like that, and it would try to find it. But we've expanded it so much more to use this natural language semantic searching. And of all the terms that I have tested this with, pretty much 100% of the time when I do it, it finds it. If not the first photo, then within the first 5 or 10 photos, it gives me the hit that I'm looking for, which I think is fantastic. All right, let's move on to the next feature. And this one is kind of near and dear to me because this was a feature that I particularly tested. I was part of the development of it. And so I'm excited that it's here. And it's the ability to zoom while cropping. Now, you might not think that's a big deal, but this has been a feature that Lightroom Classic users have been asking for years. And we just delivered it to them at Max last year in October 2025. And now it is in Lightroom for desktop. So let me show you why this is important. If I go to the crop tool here and I start cropping, so let's say I just crop in like this and I put it the crop box over here. Normally, before Lightroom 9.3, this is what you would get. You couldn't zoom in to see, maybe you want the crop box over here or you want to, tighten it up. But now you can use zooming and panning. So if I use the standard zoom keys like Command or Control plus or minus, I can zoom around and I can pan. You can also use these different zoom factors here if you'd like, or you can just use Command plus or minus. But the point is that now you can really refine the crop box, which makes it a lot easier to get the exact composition that you're looking for. And as you're cropping, if you click on fit, it will fit to the crop box, which is really nice. And of course, when you exit the crop tool, you now have your cropped photo displayed here in the preview area. All right, the next new feature is an addition to some of the features that we introduced in the last update, Lightroom 9.2. In Lightroom 9.2, we added the ability to send a photo to Firefly so that you can make edits using a prompt, or you can send a photo to Firefly to convert it to a video using prompts. Now there's a third method of sending to Firefly, and this is specifically to create mood boards. Now, at first, I wasn't really sure. I admit I was a bit skeptical about this, but the more I played around with it, the more I found myself really seeing the potential here, to the point where I'm going to create a deep dive video specifically on the different ways that you can consider using mood boards. And I'm going to show you how that works kind of at a high level right now. All right, so what I mentioned just before in terms of sending to Firefly, that was when you selected a photo and you clicked on the share button up here. And you'll see under Firefly, we had in Lightroom 9.2 the ability to edit a photo with a prompt or to generate a video using a prompt. These were the two options. But now there is this third option called Start a Mood Board. Here's the thing. With mood boards, what you'll do is you will send a photo from Lightroom to Firefly, and it'll create a mood board for you. Now, you can select up to 10 photos to send to a mood board. The limitations are currently, if you send, let's say there's an 11th or you have another 10 photos after this, if you send those to Firefly, they'll be sent to another mood board. They won't be put to the current one, but I'll show you a workaround for that in my deep dive video. The other thing is it only currently works with still photos. It doesn't work with videos. So if one of these files was a video, when you would go to share, you would see that this would actually be grayed out. But this collection here, I put it together intentionally because this is something that I can see myself using as an educator. Let's say I want to convey to students differences in how you can take photos of cars. In this case, these are all cars that I took in Cuba. So I can take all 10 of these photos, click on share, and then I'm going to select start a mood board. And then Lightroom will send those over to Firefly. And you can see here, we have the images. The first thing you'll want to do is just click over here, and that positions the photos in your board. The next thing that I like to do right away is click on this zoom dropdown and select fit all content. And so now you can see all 10 of the photos are here. Now, from here, you can click on any of these photos and reposition them. You can put photos in front of or behind each other, however you want. So you can see, let me zoom out even more. For example, I have two different classifications of photos. I've got photos of cars in motion, and I've got static cars like this one here, and this one there. And so I can have all kinds of fun. Like this photo here is using a Dutch tilt. This is using a Dutch tilt. And again, what I can do is I could arrange these however I want. Let me move this out of the way. And I can also use these other tools. Like for example, I can add a rectangle to the photo here. I can just draw this and then I could move it to the back so that the photos are on top. Of course, I could change the color to something else, like this color here. I can add text. So I could say, Dutch tilt effect. And basically what I can do is think of it this way. And I'm kind of doing this on the fly, to be honest. But imagine creating this mood board that has different sections for, say, a student, or, and this is something that if I was still leading workshops, I would totally leverage. But let's say I created a mood board for my workshop attendees with different segments of the workshop. Like, okay, this is what sunrise photos are going to look like in the area we're going, or if we're going to shoot aurora, these are the aurora shots that I have from the locations we're going. Basically, to kind of give your students or your attendees some sort of a visual inspiration board that they can look forward to. Now, it's not just workshop attendees or photography students. I know for a fact that wedding photographers and portrait photographers use mood boards all the time to iterate, to kind of inspire on their ideas. So they have an idea and they it's kind of like a visual shot list that you can create here. And so I've heard from a lot of photographers, working photographers who are very excited about having this here. And again, that's what kind of inspired me to create a deep dive video, which I should have in a couple of weeks. But at the very least, this is how the mood boards work. Now, of course, you can go ahead and share the mood board with anyone you want. You can just click this to anyone with a link and then copy the link and they'll be able to view it. And as you can see here, they can also comment or edit, which is really, really cool. Now, it goes without saying also, because we're in Firefly, you can go ahead and use a prompt here to create an image, or you can create a video, or, I can take this photo here and I can convert that right to a video here or image to 3D. So I have all these capabilities to use AI to convert them. And so you can see if I convert image to video, we've got the prompt here. It automatically sets the photo that I selected as the reference photo. You can choose the different models, and there are a bunch of different models here in Firefly. Of course, if you want to stay commercially safe, then you'll want to use Firefly Video because this is not trained on your photos. But of course, these are all credit enforced features. So you'll see over here that this requires a certain number of credits. Depending on the model that you use, it will require a different amount of credits. And so again, I really hope this kind of inspires you to at least play around with this. And then, don't forget to go ahead and rename this. So I'll say Cuba Cars. I don't know. I'm never very, very interesting when I rename when I'm recording videos. But that's okay. All right, so the next new feature that we added to Lightroom is actually a new category of presets called Film Inspired. And so if you open up a photo, I'm sticking with the Cuba car theme here, and you open up the presets browser, click on Premium up over here, and then you will see under Style, there is this Film Inspired category. And just like every other preset, if you hover over them, you will get a preview of what it looks like. And so, I actually like this rich gold preset here. And like with any other preset that you apply, you have this amount slider here. If you bring it to the left, it effectively turns it off or weakens it, or you can double down and increase that amount slider. And of course, when you go to the edit panel here, you have full control over the changes that the preset applied to your edit stack, as well as refining it using the other sliders here. Now, this next quality of life improvement is something that I've been asking for a while. And this is for anyone who routinely sends their photos from Lightroom to Photoshop. I do that all the time because there's a plugin in Photoshop by my friend Greg Benz called WebSharp Pro. I use that to export all of my HDR photos when I share them to Instagram. And so now there are additional settings or preferences that you can specify with regards to the photos that you send from Lightroom to Photoshop. And so here, there are two ways to access it. First, you can right click on the photo, go to Edit in Photoshop, and you will see that there is this contextual menu item called Edit in Photoshop Settings. Or if you go to Preferences, you will now see that there is an Edit in Photoshop tab. Both the contextual menu and going through Preferences will bring you over here. So first, the major improvement that I have here is before we were defaulting to TIFF. You had no control over the settings. We would just create a TIFF file. But now you can choose TIFF, PSD, or PSB. And that's actually a new feature as well in Lightroom, is that Lightroom now supports PSB files, which are those gigantic Photoshop files that you'll sometimes get. I like to use PSD here, and you can see that we also have the ability to control the file settings for SDR and HDR photos. So you can choose the color space for your SDR, you can control the bit depth, as well as the resolution. If you were using TIFF, you can also control the compression here. But because I'm using PSD, you don't need to do that. And you also have independent controls for HDR photos. So these are the color spaces for HDR, as well as the resolution. HDR photos are 32 bits, so that's why it's grayed out. But I really love that this is here now. All you need to do is set this once, and then it'll use those settings going forward. Now, we've also made some major improvements to assisted culling, which we released last October at Adobe Max. And basically, we're making it so that the scoring process is just more accurate. And so I definitely recommend trying that out. I'll leave a link at the end of this video to a deep dive on how assisted culling works, but it's really great to see the team consistently work on making it better. And I promise you, we're not stopping there. It's going to get even better over the next few versions. Another thing that we added in Lightroom 9.3 is full support for compressed RAW with the new Sony a7 IV. And so you can see here, these are a bunch of photos that I took with the Sony a7 IV. These are compressed HQ files. And so you can see that they're rendering correctly now. All right, so those are the new features and improvements that we added to Lightroom 9.3. For me, the feature that I've been using the most over the past few months has been that intelligent search. I love kind of trying to find different search terms and getting the results that I'm looking for right away. I also am, again, partial to the ability to zoom while cropping because that was a feature that I worked on. I hope you guys find it helpful too. Now, these are just a few of the new features and capabilities that you have with Lightroom. If you want to learn everything there is to know about Lightroom desktop, mobile, and web, please check out my course called Lightroom Everywhere. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. I also mentioned how I have this video if you want to learn all about assisted culling, or you can see what YouTube thinks you might like. As always, a thumbs up is greatly appreciated, as is clicking on the subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified of all future videos. Thanks a lot, everyone.